Hello everyone, welcome to Ram's Music Tech. In this video, I'm going to show you how we can do pattern recordings between Roland Fantom 8 and Bitwig Studio. So, in case you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do that. Hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to be notified of future videos that I will put up on my channel. Alright, let's get started. This is not the creation of a control script. It's a custom template that we'll be creating to enable recording of patterns between Bitwig Studio and Roland Fantom. First things first, we need to get the audio and MIDI settings right. So first, let's go to the Roland Fantom screen. Press the menu button, go to System, and in Roland Fantom, under the general settings of system, we can see the second option, USB driver. The USB driver should be set to vendor. If you see the options for the USB driver, you have vendor and generic. We need to set it to vendor so that we can have the 16 channel audio routing to a DAW. Next, we need to set the audio and MIDI settings in Bitwig Studio. Under settings menu in Bitwig Studio, we go to the submenu of audio and we need to select ASIO, and the device should be set to Fantom 678, considering that you have connected your Fantom to the computer. So Bitwig detects it as Fantom 678. Now, under input buses, if you see here, I have set the 16 stereo inputs from Roland Fantom into Bitwig separately for each of the 16 channels, and I've named the input buses from zone 1 to zone 16. Now these are the 16 zones corresponding to the 16 zones of Roland Fantom, and all the audio inputs will come in from there. And the output is being set to speakers, which is essentially the main outputs from the Roland Fantom. For the MIDI settings, we go to the controllers options under settings in Bitwig Studio and make sure that your Roland Fantom is being selected under a generic MIDI keyboard option. Fantom has three options, the normal Fantom drive, and then you have DAW control and MIDI in, which are used for other purposes. MIDI would be if you're using the MIDI output from Roland to connect to a MIDI input to an interface. But if you're using USB for your audio and MIDI from Roland, you got to choose the standard Fantom 678 option. Let's start making the template in Bitwig Studio. Now we can record both MIDI and audio clips from Roland Fantom into Bitwig. Let's look at them one by one. For MIDI clip, you right click and add an instrument track. You can go to the inspector, and first thing you do is for the first track, let's say this is for zone 1 MIDI. So right click on the track, click rename, or you can do Control R in Windows, and let me name that zone 1. In the inspector, under channel, select from 1 to 1 so that this track is solely for the first zone from Roland Fantom. As we will be predominantly working in the clip launcher view of Bitwig Studio for creating this template, let's switch to the clip launcher view. You can click the clip launcher button above the tracks, and then you can deactivate the arrangement view, so we'll be in the clip launcher view. Next, let's add a device to the zone 1 instrument track. Down below in the device panel, which you can get by clicking D. If you click D, it'll go out and comes in. So D for device, click zone 1, and then you click the plus button, the zone 1 device panel. In the search here, type HW, and you would want to choose HW instrument in your options here for the devices. So there, we have the HW instrument device that's added to the zone 1 instrument track. Now remember, the zone 1 instrument track is connected to the zone 1 of Roland Fantom. And we want to, it's connected to zone 1 because uh, we are on MIDI channel 1, which corresponds to the zone 1 of Roland Fantom. Now, in the HW instrument device below, by default, you have a no MIDI output. Now, the reason we are adding this device is if we want to route the MIDI created on this instrument track to the audio from Roland Fantom. So we need to route the MIDI output to Phantom 678. And then we choose channel 1 because this MIDI output needs to go to channel 1 of Roland Fantom. Now you have the power activation button of this HW instrument device, which we can switch on and off depending on if we want the routing to happen or not. For now, we shall keep the HW instrument, which is the hardware instrument device, switched off for the zone. Next, selecting the zone 1, let's go to the menu bar at the top, and you have the option for duplicate instrument track. Click that and you get a new track, just the same settings. Right click, rename, change that to zone 2. In the inspector for this zone, select channel 2, from channel 2 to channel 2. So you can see zone 1 is for channel 1, zone 2 is for channel 2. Similarly, in the hardware instrument below, select channel 2 for the second track, which is corresponding to zone 2. Let's do one more. And having duplicated the zone 2, you can rename this to zone 3. Change the channel input and output to 3, from 3 to 3, and below in the hardware instrument device, change it to channel 3. So we now have 3 tracks, one each for zone 1, 2, and 3, corresponding to zones 1, 2, and 3 of the Roland Fantom. Let's group these 3 instrument tracks into one group. Right click in open space, click add group track, rename the group track to, let's say, RF8 MIDI. Mine is a Roland Fantom 8, so I'm just going to name it RF8 MIDI. Okay, we can move this group track to the top. What we do is select these 3 instrument tracks, zone 1 to 3, and just drop them into the group. So now if you open the group RF8 MIDI, you have the 3 instrument tracks, zone 1 to 3, inside RF8 MIDI. So as you would have guessed, we can continue just duplicating these tracks and creating zones right up to zone 16, because we've got 16 zones in Fantom. You can have 16 instrument tracks corresponding to each of the 16 zones from Roland Fantom for the MIDI. Next, let's look at how we can have audio tracks in a very similar way. So right click, add audio track this time, and again, rename this to zone 1. But this time, this is an audio track. So in the inspector for zone 1, as you can see, by default, it has taken zone 1. Now this zone 1 audio input actually corresponds to the zone 1 audio input from my Roland Fantom into Bitwig. So as you can see here under audio input options in the inspector, you have zone 1 to 16, which I've already created in my audio settings. So by default, it has taken zone 1, rightly so. So as you can see, this audio track is set for audio input from the zone 1 of Roland Fantom. Similarly, you can just duplicate the track. Let's say I duplicate 2 of them, change, rename this to zone 2, third one to zone 3. And if you look at the inspector settings, this is for zone 1. Zone 2, you have to change it to zone 2 audio input, zone 3 to zone 3 audio input from Roland Fantom. Now, similar to what we did for the MIDI, uh, you can group them in a different way. Instead of adding a group track first, you just select these 3 audio tracks, zone 1 to 3, multi-select them, right click, and select the option group in the right click menu. It creates a group for these 3 tracks. And I can click the group track and rename that to RF8 audio. There you go. So now you have a group RF8 MIDI which has 3 instrument tracks in it, and a group RF8 audio which has 3 audio tracks in it corresponding to zones 1 to 3 from Roland Fantom. A suggestion for the audio tracks that we've created here for the zones is that when we insert the audio track, you have the auto monitor on the inspector panel, as you can see here, uh, checked, activated by default. Let's deactivate them. It's preferable. We'll come to that later why we do that, because during audio recording, there is a duplication of the sound if you're using the output of the Phantom itself as your output. So it's preferable to keep this auto monitor switched off for the audio track. Now, if you see the Roland Phantom's touchscreen view here, the pattern view, you can see you've got the patterns A to H vertically and the zones horizontally. And if you want a similar view in Bitwig, let's click Tab, and then we go to the mixer view, which gives us all zones, you know, on vertical columns, and then in the rows you would have what we call as scenes in Bitwig, which correspond to the variation patterns in Roland Fantom. If I click plus here, you get scene 1. Clicking Control R, lets us change the name. I'm going to name it as A, which, as your guess, can correspond to the variation A in Roland Fantom. Now I'm going to change it to A here as well. So, right. Now I can keep adding scenes in Bitwig and change them to the names of the variations. In this case will be B. So you can keep creating this till you get to H, because you just have 8 variations. So you just need scenes in Bitwig from A to H. Now if you see on the right side the various options for the mixer view that we've got here, just the second one from the top, it's an option for using larger clip height. If I click that, you see the clip heights increase, so you have a better view of the variation scenes that we have created in Bitwig Studio. Now again, on this view, if I click Tab, I go back to the the track view, as opposed to the mixer view, which was the other one. We come back to the previous view that we had, and here you can see how the scenes are, in the form of columns with the zones in rows. Whereas if you click Tab again, here in the mixer view, you have the zones in columns, and each of the scenes in rows, which actually, as you can see, is very similar to how you have it in a Roland Fantom. The next thing we're going to do is 2 important settings. If you see the menu bar at the top, click the menu for play, and then under here, we can keep the pre-roll for 2 bars, or as per your choice, that's fine. And you need to have a default launch quantization. Now I'm going to choose 4 bars. Now this is for a reason. We'll come to why I'm choosing 4 bars. You could choose whatever suits your project or what you want to do, but I'm choosing 4, and I'll explain to you later during recording how that helps. And then a post-recording action delay. Now we have this option here. Now this option tells Bitwig what to do after a part is being recorded. All right. Now you have a number of options here. You can either play the recorder, record into the next free slot, stop, return to arrangement, return to last clip, and play random. I'm going to choose record into next free slot. I'm choosing this, and I'm going to let you know once we do the recording process. And here, this field is for the number of bars, or the duration after which Bitwig will record into the next free slot. I'm going to choose 4 bars. Also, you'll come to know when we record why I'm choosing 4 bars. Now, this could be different for different individuals who record based on how many bars they have maximum. I I have 4 bars maximum in the particular Roland scene from where I'm recording clips into Bitwig. So I just have 4 bars maximum on any clip there. So I'm choosing 4 bars as the setting to record into the new next free slot in Bitwig. So default launch quantization 4 bars, and uh, record into next free slot with a delay of 4 bars. That's the setting I'm going to be doing here. Once we have the basic settings done, we can save this as a template. Choose File in the menu, go to Save as Template. You can give a name for the template, whatever you want. Anything, and put any details that you want, and then say OK, and it gets saved as a template. Now, I've got a complete template saved for this. I've named it as RF8 Bitwig Pattern Sequencer. Your templates will come under the category My Templates. So RF8 Bitwig Pattern Sequencer, I'm going to open that template. Now, as you can see, this in the track view, we got the folders RF8 MIDI, RF8 Audio. If I open the folder RF8 MIDI, there you go. You got zones 1 to 16. Let me close that and close RF8 Audio. You got again zones 1 to 16. So as you can see, under RF8 MIDI, there are all the instrument tracks from zone 1 to 16 for the MIDI clip recordings. And under RF8 Audio, you got zones 1 to 16 audio tracks for the audio clips recording from the Fantom. I've named the sub-level in the group for the scenes as A MIDI to H MIDI for the MIDI group, and for the audio, it's A audio to H audio, just to make it absolutely specific. If I click I for the inspector, you can see very clearly. You click each of the tracks, you can see the channels all will be going right from 1 to 16 as we need based on the channel numbers. And for the audio, they will be the zones 1 to 16 corresponding to the audio routing from Roland Fantom to Bit. Under the MIDI instrument tracks group, you just click D for device. It brings up the device panel, and you click each track. You can see the hardware instrument that we inserted, and that goes right from zone 1 to 16, where in the hardware instrument we've selected the channel numbers according to the zones. All right, let's get some patterns recorded from the Fantom into Bitwig Studio. The first thing we need to do is we need to tempo sync the transport between the Fantom and Bitwig. For this, we need to go to the settings, and in the settings menu, we need to go to the synchronization section where we have transport sync in, which means that Bitwig will have itself synced to an external tempo source. Now, in this case, our external tempo source is the Roland Fantom. So when we have the transport working on the Roland Fantom, Bitwig will operate according to that. So for that, we need to choose sync method to be MIDI clock, which is initially off. We choose MIDI clock, and then as it's selected here, we choose the Fantom to be the MIDI input for the transport sync into Bitwig Studio. The other thing that we need to do is to activate the MIDI synchronization option in the Fantom. For this, we go to the menu and system settings of the Fantom. We go to the options for sync/tempo, in which we have the sync mode to be master, which is exactly what we want. We want the Roland Fantom to be the master in this case. And the sync output, the second option, should be on. If you see, it's on. So because it's on, it means the Phantom can send MIDI sync into an external DAW, which in our case is going to be Bitwig Studio. The third option is the system clock source, which is USB, which is what we need indeed because I've connected my Roland Fantom to my laptop through USB. Let's go to the mix view in Bitwig Studio by clicking Tab. Now that view, as we saw, looks similar to the pattern view in the Phantom. If I just expand the folder for RF MIDI, you can see all the 16 zones, but for the recording that I want to do from the scene that I have in the Phantom, I've just got a few zones here from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 8, and we're just going to get running with that recording. So first, we just activate the recording on the mix view for the zones. In this case, zone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 8. And for the pattern A, variation A, which is the scene A in Bitwig Studio, let's control click the record buttons on these clips. And as we can recollect, under the play menu, we have chosen post recording action to be record into the next free slot with a delay of 4. In the Phantom, we need to have the pad mode assigned to variations. So we click pad mode, and then by choosing edit on the screen, we choose the option 10, which is variation play. When we have this option, as you can see on the pads, we will have variations A to D on these white lit pads on the left, and variations from E to H on the green lit pads on the rightmost. Now, the reason I chose 4 bars to be the delay for recording to the next free slot is because I have a maximum of 4 bars on my patterns in the Phantom. So after every 4 bars of recording one variation, the recording can move the next variation. The way I move from one variation to the next is by using the pads over here, which can move from variation A to H in sequence. Now, in order for me to move from one variation to the next, I need to just wait for the last bar, because in Roland, the quantization for moving to the next variation is 1 measure, which is 1 bar, which means when the pattern just goes into the 4th bar, I need to click the next variation, which then would move the recording in Bitwig to the next variation in Bitwig. So you'll get what that means once I just do the demo right now. And what we need to remember is that when the recording is happening from one variation to the next, you would have the recording in Bitwig move to the next variation because of the option that we have chosen on the post recording action with a delay of 4 bars. All right, with the record enabled on the zones as well as the clips in variation A enabled to start recording, once I click the pad number 1, the recording will start, and then I move from one pad to the other to record all the variations. So here goes. I'll stop the recording because I don't have anything on variation H. So as you can see, the clips have been recorded. Couple of tidying up here. We click tab. One thing is, you have the color options for the zones here. That's how I chose colors which are similar to uh, my colors on the Phantom. So just for uniformity, of course, you could just choose whatever you want, which different. So going back to the mix view. Now the other thing is, obviously we don't have all the clips, but in the recording, uh, Bitwig records all the clips as the um, particular zones were activated for recording. So we can just delete the clips that we actually don't want. Like for example, in zone 1, we don't have pattern E and H. So our pattern H is not there for um, the entire number of zones. So we can select all of them and delete them. Um, and for zone 1, we don't have pattern E as well. You can delete that. And this way you can just delete whatever is not there. And except C, you don't have anything in zone 2. Now this will vary from scene to scene depending on which clips you have in the scenes in your fan. So you just got to do that accordingly. That's about it. So now if you see the patterns all recorded on the Bitwig after the cleanup is exactly the same as what we have in the Phantom. Now let's play these clips from Bitwig into the Phantom. Firstly, in the options, make sure that in the synchronization, the sync method is off because now we want to run the transport right from Bitwig. Let's try MIDI variation. Well, nothing's playing. That's because there is an important step that we still need to do. On the side options, the fourth one from the top says show device chains. When you click that, you'll see the hardware instrument that we have added to all the zones. We had deactivated them by default. We need to activate this so that these MIDI clips can be routed to the sounds to the Phantom. So let's activate zones 1 to 5 and then zone 8 because that's where we got the clips. And now let's try playing them. There you go, it's playing. Now you click the next variation, it'll play only after the 4 bars. There you go. As you could see, the variations were playing only after the entire 4 bars were done, and that's because in the play option, it chosen default launch quantization as 4 bars. That's the reason I chose 4, because by default, I just wanted any new variation that I click to play only after the entire 4 bars of the previous variation is done. So this way, you can see you can play these MIDI clips from Bitwig as we recorded them into the Phantom, with the Phantom not playing them, but the clips being actually played from Bitwig. Similar to the instrument tracks where we record the MIDI clips, we can record audio directly to Bitwig as well. So if I close the folder for MIDI and open RF8 audio, we could simply do the same thing. For that, on the RF8 MIDI, we just mute it so that we don't want any MIDI to be recorded. And the audio, we need to activate the record enabling for zones 1 to 5 and then 8, because those are the zones we want from this scene in Phantom. And same way, we need to make sure the synchronization MIDI clock is on and activate the clips, record enable the clip in zones 1 to 5, 8, and then on the pads, we start the variation. there goes. So on. We can just record all the audio clips similar to how we recorded the MIDI clips, and they just directly get recorded in the audio clips because the audio from the zones of the Phantom are directly getting routed into Bitwig on these tracks. Just do the similar cleanup on the audio tracks as well for all the clips that aren't actually necessary or are not required. So then you get the similar uh, template that we have from the Phantom. Now, the other way that you can record audio clips is also from the MIDI clips. So you've got the MIDI clips, and you can run the MIDI clips into the audio through Phantom, and you don't have to record them from Phantom directly. You can record the audio that's been triggered by the MIDI clips from Bitwig into the audio tracks of Bitwig itself with the sound coming from Phantom. So that's also a way you can do it. Um, so there's this a lot of flexibility in that regard. Now, as we can see in this Phantom screen, this is the full 16 track view on the Phantom. But just have the 8 view or the 16 view. Point is that we've got 16 zones across and 8 variations, so total of 128 clips that we can have in Phantom. So our template in Bitwig is created just to that capacity. So you can actually have the same thing applied across the 16 zones and the 8 variations. As many clips and that can come into that in your scene can be recorded in a similar manner into Bitwig. Now I'll quickly show you how we can record patterns from Bitwig to the Phantom. Now, let's say in the same scene that we have here, say there are no clips temporarily in utility. Let's say delete all pattern delete. Okay. So there you go. Just have an empty pattern view in the Phantom, which means just got sort of a blank slate on this scene in Phantom. Now, whereas in Bitwig we've got these patterns. Now let's say we want to record these MIDI patterns into the Phantom. Now let's remember that you can't record audio clips into the Phantom, so you can only record the MIDI clips into the Phantom because we don't have audio clips for the pattern sequencer in Phantom. The other thing is the limitation is that you can only record, at the moment, I only figured that we could record one variation at a time into the Phantom because there's no way where the recording can move from one variation to the next the way we could move from one variation to the next, or rather one scene to the next in Bitwig, because what we call as variations in Bitwig is other scenes. So we had that option in Bitwig, but on the Phantom, we can't move the recording continuously from one variation to the other. So the limitation is you need to record one variation at a time. In order to record from the Bitwig to the Phantom, for the tempo sync, we need to do the reverse of what we did earlier. So firstly, we need to go into the Bitwig menus, and under synchronization, we don't do anything for the tempo sync in, it'll be off. But for the MIDI sync out, we will, under the option for Phantom 678, we click clock and just keep it rest of the settings as it is. The reason we got to do this is because now Bitwig will be the master and the Phantom will have to be the slave receiving the MIDI transport and tempo from Bitwig. Now, so the other thing that we need to do is go into the Phantom menu, have the sync mode as master. We need to change that to slave. So the Phantom is now the slave, which means it will receive the MIDI transport from Bitwig. Sync output can remain on. I don't think that's a problem. And the clock source, of course, will be USB. So the only change you got to make is you need to change Phantom's sync mode to slave. One important step that we need to do before we record into the Phantom is that we need to select all the zones which need recording into the clips for the Phantom. So For example, for the variation A, we've got zone 1, 4, and 8 that we need to record. So we need to make sure 1, 4, and 8 are activated on the Phantom for simultaneous recording. Now that I've selected those zones, I need to click record on the Phantom's transport and make sure that the count-in selection is on wait node. Means the moment the notes start coming in from the Bitwig, Phantom will record the clips. So now that the record is enabled and wait node is on, I can click a MIDI on my Bitwig and Phantom will start recording, as you'll see. I stopped the recording now because we had chosen 4 bars to be recorded on the Phantom, which is, corresponding to the number of bars that we need to be recorded from Bitwig. So at the end of 4 bars, Phantom just stopped recording and you had the clips recorded as you can see now. Let me show you the full screen. You have the clips for zone 1, 4, and 8 recorded because we had activated them. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play this from the Phantom. If I play this from the Phantom, you can see click play on the Phantom and the clips from the Phantom are going to play. There you go. Exactly as we wanted. We could do the same thing, record from pattern B from Bitwig. Only thing what you need to make sure is you move the cursor to B, and when you click record, make sure that it's enabled to record on the variation B with the wait node. And if you click B MIDI, it'll record to the variation B in Phantom. There you go. So now if I play the variation B on the Phantom, will play back. That's about it. That's the way you can record MIDI clips, one variation at a time from Bitwig to Phantom as well. The one last thing I'm going to show you is how we can record an entire song pattern that we may have created in Phantom into Bitwig, and that we can do in the Arrange view. So if we click Tab, we go to the Arrange view, we move from the click launcher to the Arrangement view. So what you have now is on the Arrangement timeline, we have a blank slate because we haven't recorded anything there. So let's enable the zones that we want to record, which are essentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 8, because those are the zones that we have on our Phantom pattern sequencer. And we go to the song view. So song, and we go to the song view because I already have a set of patterns recorded as a song in Phantom. And the other thing that we need to do is go to the settings of Phantom, make sure in synchronization we have the MIDI clock as it's selected as Phantom. And in Phantom, we need to have the MIDI sync tempo set to master again because Phantom's going to be the most. And we have record enabled for these zones, and you need to click the main record here. The moment you click play on the Phantom, Bitwig will start recording the sequence as they are on the song into the arranger timeline. There you go. Once I activate the arranger timeline, you can see that the clips have been recorded, and there you go. So you can have an entire timeline arrangement recorded from the song that you have in Bit. So as you can see, you've got the patterns from Phantom to Bitwig, and you can record from Bitwig to Phantom as well, one variation at a time, and then entire arranged timelines that you would have saved as songs in your Phantom scene. So hope you folks enjoyed this video and you liked and understood it as well. So anything that you have that you want to share based on your experience of trying this out, or any other ideas that you have, or anything that you might have faced as a problem, or you do face as a problem when you try this, please put those on the comments. And even if there's any questions, I might try to answer them if I can, and if I can find an answer to it, surely. And please do not forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon to be notified of future videos that I might be releasing on my channel. So take care, everybody, and hope you enjoy working with the Roland Phantom and Bitwig, and both of them together as well. Take care and happy music making.